Welcome to Inside Personal Growth Podcast. Deep dive with us as we unlock the secrets to personal development, empowering you to thrive. Here, growth isn't just a goal, it's a journey. Tune in, transform, and take your life to the next level by listening to just one of our podcasts. Well, welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voice, the host of Inside Personal Growth. And today joining us, and where are you in the Bay Area exactly, Helene?
I am in Berkeley, 10 minutes from campus.
Berkeley, okay. Is Helene Cahen, and she has a book out called Fire Up Innovation. I'm going to put that in front of the camera. And it's Sparking and Sustaining Innovation Teams. And we know in this world that's fast-paced today and corporations always wanting to get more out of their employees, that innovation is a big deal. And I'm going to tell them a little bit about you. She's an innovator, consultant, trainer, facilitator, and over 20 years experience helping companies navigate innovation challenges. She's the author of Fire Up Innovation and a TEDx speaker. You can go out and look for that. She's the founder and principal consultant at Fire Up Innovation Consulting, previously Strategic Insights, where she guides Fortune 500 companies, small businesses, and nonprofits to understand innovation, create innovation, new products, services, build effective teams, and support a user-centered culture. She's also a lecturer, coach, and facilitator at the University of California, Berkeley, Haas School of Business, and the Haas Executive Program, teaching innovation principles to both students and executives. She's born and raised in Paris, graduated with a business degree with the Elite Science Paris, trained in creative problem solving and design thinking. Helene is also received a Master's of Science in Creativity and Change Leadership from Buffalo State University of New York, and she is a certified Foresight facilitator. You can learn more about her book, her speaking engagements, and her services by going to Fire Up Innovation. That's Fire, F-I-R-E-U-P, innovation.com. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on Inside Personal Growth and finally get to do our interview together. And I'm excited for my listeners because I think you've got some things to tell us, not only about the book, but what's inside the book, the way the book's laid out. I will tell my people, this is truly not just a book you put on the shelf. This is a book you use. You can actually write in it. You can do the exercises in it. You can, you really is something. Don't be afraid to pick this up and write it. I know so many people, they get a book and it's like, oh, I don't want to do it. And I think you did say to me that you do have some handouts people can get. Is that correct, from your website if they don't want to write in the book?
If you get in the book, there's a QR code and you can get everything downloaded as a journal. So you can take as many notes as possible and scratch it and start again. So it's definitely there too.
There you go. So that's one way. So what inspired you to write Fire Up Innovation, and how did your personal journey shape the ideas kind of presented in this book? Because you really do talk about a lot.
Yeah, so I'm defining myself as a practitioner. So I practice innovation, I train, I coach, and I facilitate it. And I wanted to share my knowledge of experience, and I wanted to do it in a way that kind of represent, if you hire me, how do I get myself in a book? And so that was my personal challenge. And so that's why I didn't want it to be a book to read, because you can read innovation as much as possible. It won't change anything unless you do. So that book has a reading part because I wanted to anchor. I don't want it to be a tool book because that doesn't help either. I wanted to anchor in the theory and understanding of innovation and creativity, but I wanted to make it super practical so that each chapter has a practice and there's some tools. So I would really recommend to use it and by trying new things and then observe, reflect, learn, and keep going. Because that's really how you learn about innovation. So I wanted the book to reflect my philosophy and the way I work with my clients as well.
Well, I think sparking and sustaining innovation teams is the key. And this is, most people are working in teams when they're innovating. So can you elaborate on what you mean by innovation through a new lens and how this perspective differs like from traditional views on innovation? Because, there's so many books out there that people have written about innovation and creativity, using your intuition, all this kind of stuff to actually become more innovative. And I know that part of it is us reaching a point in our own physical being, where we're having fun, we're at play, we're getting endorphins released in our body, we're getting higher levels of oxytocins in our body because play is a big part of it. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, so play is part of creativity, and our brain works better if we have fun and enjoy the experience. The way that maybe my book is different than a lot of books is we talk a lot about the outcome. Of course, that's what we want, but we don't talk so much about the process and the thinking necessary for innovation. And it is different than working by yourself, because you work by yourself, you have certain ways you solve problem and you can do it. But you put a team together, and usually the team is put together based on their background. So we need a finance person, and we need an R&D person, and we need a marketing person, which is great. But then you put them together, and they might not have a clear process to use. They might not have a common language. They might not have tools, and they might not even know how they solve problem themselves. And so when you work in a team and people solve problems differently, which we all do, but we don't know about it, it can create a lot of tensions and issues of miscommunication, which is not due by the fact that we're not creative. It's just the way that we're creative in a different ways. And that's really what I wanted to suggest and emphasize. So whatever the outcome that you want to use, this book can help better collaboration, more efficient, and then more fun in collaborating, because we can remove some of the friction and tension and enjoy the ride together.
Well, I think it's when people come up with new ideas or they innovate, a lot of times people will say, well, I know this might sound silly to you, but, I was in the shower and I had this great idea, or I was out on a jog and I had a great idea, or I was in the middle of a meditation and all of a sudden I got this wham, there are people that look at it that way. I know Roger Van Osh is up in your area, and it's a whack inside of the head. He's going to be on the show here in the next couple of weeks. And, it's that whack sometimes on the side of the head, but people don't usually think of innovation. It's almost like a conundrum as a process. So can you walk us through the core principles of innovation process that you discuss in the book and how the teams can apply these principles effectively? Because I know one thing is sparking the idea. The next thing is then, well, after you spark the idea, we've got to go through and prove it. Fundamentally, we've got to walk through how are we going to make this thing come true, right? How are we going to manifest this? So talk about that process, if you would.
I would, and I just want to kind of do a general response to what you say. Is the idea, I believe, is the easiest thing. And the idea is a very, very small, new ideas is a very, very small part of an innovation process. Yeah. And yet that's the one that we talked about. So let me go through the steps and I can tell you how much emphasis I would put on the idea. So the first thing is you have to really understand the problem you're trying to solve and what is the challenge at hand. And often we make assumptions that this is what we want to do. And if we take time to talk to users, observe what's happening, understanding different level of pains and need gap, then you can realize that the problem is not really the problem, and there's a different one that is more important or more relevant or more unique or a different angle. So the first thing is spend time on understanding the problem. Then the second part is come up with ideas. And yes, it's important. And in the idea phase, like in every phase of an innovation process, there is two steps. There is the diverge part, when we look at a lot of options, and the converge part when we select. So what we usually think about brainstorming ideas is only the diverge part of the ideation step, which is step number 2. And that one, I would say, if I work with a team for 3 or 4 days, I'll probably spend no more than an hour on that part. So it's really a very small part. It's easy to come up with ideas like, what do we do next? And the next step in the ideation is actually, how do we select those that we want to move forward? And then once you selected some ideas, and I would always want to keep more than one because you don't know what's going to happen next. The next one is developing those ideas, make them into solution, prototype them, test them, get feedback, see, because ideas are often a bunch of words, but what's happened in the reality? And that's where that development phase is really critical. And then once you narrow them down, get some feedback, think there is a way to make it happen, then the last phase, phase 4, is actually implementing it. And implementing has also a lot of activities because you have to think about all the ways that you may make it possible and then decide all of the details, whether it's a product, you want to manufacture it, you want to sell it, you want to get the financial, you want all the elements of a business model to be there. So this is as back to your question, this is a whole process and it's much more than ideas.
Yeah. And it is all outlined in the book very specifically. And I want my listeners to know that. And, when you work in teams and to get teams kind of working together, right, to solve this problem, like you said, you're bringing people in from a different department. Might be marketing, might be sales, might be engineering, might be all these different people with different ideas that they're sharing around the problem they're trying to solve. We've all identified this. We agree it's the right one. In your experience, what are some of the common challenges that innovation teams face? And how can they overcome these challenges to work more collaboratively? That's the key word here. And effectively, because sometimes those teams don't see eye to eye, but they need to.
Yes. So to your point, coming from different function and role and also experience, previous experience, level of experience, our personal life experience, we all kind of see things a certain way with our own assumptions. And so what's really important for the team is to kind of emerge those different perspectives. And that's also the beauty of an innovation team is those multiple perspectives are important because the problem solution that you're going to come with, the solution you're coming with also is multifaceted. So you need all those perspectives as the world is multi-perspective and the solution will have those. The challenge is how do you make them work together? And so that's why having a common process and tools really helps because then instead of being stuck in what do we do next or how are we going to facilitate that meeting or what tool can help, they can really focus on the content, which is really those ideas, those steps, all those things that really are important. And so the process, having a good process, a good tool, common language, common approach, whatever it is, makes the outcome and the content, you have much more time and energy for it instead of fighting on how are we going to facilitate this meeting or what needs to happen next. We all know and we all agree. An organization might have different ones and it doesn't matter as much as having a clear process that everybody is trained and is on board about it. And then the other part that I feel is really important is sometimes we don't talk so much is understanding how we naturally solve problems and be aware that this is unique to us and it's different with other people. And so that's why I use a tool. It's called Foresight, and I can tell you more if we want later, but it really helps mapping your own way of solving problem, and then you can map the team way of solving problem. And you start emerging some of the team dynamics that can be potentially an issue, and then you can scaffold and teach those skills. So let's say if the team is not really strong in coming up with ideas, that's not their strong part. You can be sure you have some tools that are going to force them to not rush after the first 10 ideas, but go to 400 or 200 or 500 or whatever it is. So the tool can help facilitate where naturally we might cut corners or not go in that direction.
Well, if people want to learn more about Foresight, that particular tool, they can go to your website. And they obviously, as I'm going to hold up here again, they can get the book. That's what we want you to do, is get a copy of the book. And all the resources are there at the website. And from what you said, I understand you've got different personality, different type people together. I can imagine that finding what your style is like and then finding what others and then coming together with some kind of map makes it much easier for us to get to where we need to go. It's almost like going in a car and somebody saying, no, we're going here, we're going there, we're going here. No, we're all going over here. And here's what we've all decided and how we're going to get there. And that brings me to this. One of the chapters is about sustaining creativity and innovation in a company. And I do get that, hey, once you innovate or you create something and you put it to market and you start to create and generate sales or whatever it might be, or it solves some problem, sometimes things tail off. People aren't working in it. But the reality is companies today, with the speed at which technology is taking us, have to stay at the forefront of innovation. This is a critical part. And what are some of the key strategies for maintaining an innovative environment over a long-term period of time? What would you tell a CEO who's listening to this, or a top manager who's like, hey, well, we have the budget, but we just haven't implemented it because we're too busy doing what we normally do, which is selling what we sell?
Oh, so there's a couple of things. The first one is, I think in this environment, particularly, if we don't innovate, the business is not going to grow, or the business might go down. And we talk a lot about the risk of innovating, and that's why some companies don't do it or don't take much risk. But we don't talk as much the risk of not innovating. Like, if you're not innovating in a market that is changing and things are changing around you, then you're not going to maintain your market share. You're likely to go down. So innovation is critical. And to your point, it comes from the higher level. You have to have a culture that supports innovation. You have to have investment that supports innovation with clear criteria. And I'm not saying you just throw money at it, but you're clear about what you want to accomplish. But you want to do it over time, because innovation also takes sometimes. And then the biggest thing is, I think, is how is a company treating what they consider failure. And if a team is working on a project and at some point the project is not going to work because it doesn't meet the criteria, because it's whatever, too expensive, take more time, you don't have the technology, what happens? And if the company appreciate that and learn some lessons and kind of use that to get to the next innovation, that's going to sustain innovation. On the other hand, if there is a judgment, if the team has some potentially bad or negative consequences about this, if we just put the project under the rug and don't even talk about what we learn, then it's not going to be a culture that sustains innovation, because the next team is going to say, well, what happened on project X? We want to be really careful. So maybe we don't push our idea so much. Maybe we don't talk about this. And then it's kind of
well, you're kind of building a culture of fear.
Exactly.
And you can't have fear if you're going to innovate. You have to be bold. You have to be willing to step out. And I get that if management thinks, hey, the last project didn't go well and we invested in it. No, innovation is what it is. It's in a sense, it's your R&D department. We could talk about that, but it's really your research and development department that's working on this, and you have to be there. Now, one of the things that you cover in this book is, you call it the basic toolbox for sustaining innovation. And I think this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the book, is the toolbox. Can you highlight a few of the essential tools from the toolbox and explain how they could be used in like real world situations?
Okay, and I'll start with a smaller level, because there's a lot of tool books and they show you 100 tools, but a tool is only as good as you understand how to build your house, basically, or the foundation. So I'll start with a simple thing, and I really believe that whiteboards and Post-it notes, virtual notes on a whiteboard is a great tool, because you can work together, you can work asynchronously. It's like the new war room. You used to have that big room on big projects that we keep everything. This is where we can keep everything.
Excuse me, but what about something like Miro?
Yeah, exactly.
Where teams can get together and put Post-it notes and sticky notes and I saw at your website all the things you do physically, and I think that's great, but we live in a world where everybody's all over the place now, working from Paris, working from Germany, working from wherever. So Miro is a good place to do that. Okay.
Virtual whiteboard are the best because they allow you to work asynchronously. You have the team in Germany has an idea at 2:00 in the morning. They can put it there, and it's there for the team the next day. And it keeps everything in one place. And the other thing that is nice with that is the ability to move things. So let's say you come up and you ask the team to come up with ideas and you give them a couple of days. So you have a bunch of ideas. Now we can say, what do we do? So that was the diverging part of the ideation. Now, how are we going to get them together? And that's a tool is clustering. So we would group those nodes together and find some themes around it that are bigger than each idea, but now we have some theme. So we can move them and then we can put a title and then we can rank them and we can vote on it and all those things. So I think having notes, the other thing with notes, which is nice, is everybody can work at the same time. It works for introvert and extrovert because it gives, because of the whiteboard can be asynchronous, it gives people time to think about it. So you don't always have to work together. And so I really think that that's a really basic tool, but I think they're underused. And I would say, just try play with it. Mural, they have free tests. I would definitely encourage this as a really, really basic tool, but just that can really make a difference.
There's also another one that I could encourage people because I've used many of these. It's called Explain Everything. And it is recently been bought out, I think, by Paradox or something. But the point is that, you're trying to find a tool that you can work across time zones and areas with people to collaborate and innovate together. And there's some really interesting tools out there that have evolved as a result of, pre-pandemic, many of these didn't exist. Post-pandemic, if you want to talk what's good, we've really had a change in technology with relation to post-pandemic tools that people use for innovation and communicate, right?
Yes, there's a lot there, and I think they can be used more. If the other thing
what does Helene use? What do you use with your clients?
So I use whiteboard. I use Post-its. That's a basic. If I look at each of the 4 phases, let me give you one key tool for each. And one thing that is also really important is sometimes we don't talk about it so much, is having clear criteria for decisions upfront in a project. Because otherwise we get some problem, we get ideas, and then everybody kind of vote on a very subjective way, and you actually miss the point. So that's really simple, but it's really critical.
I know that people are not going to believe this, but I keep these around and I buy them. See how big these Post-it notes are? And I have a whole closet full of these because I use these all the time. Now, these Post-it notes are available. I don't think there's a lot of people out there that probably know they make them this size. I don't even know what this is. This is 11 by 11. So they're great. They're awesome, when you got to get your point across. So Post-it notes, definitely. So look, 5-week innovation challenge. The book includes this 5-week innovation challenge. What is the purpose of this challenge in your estimation? And how can individuals and teams benefit from undertaking the challenge? I love the fact that you put a challenge in because it's like, okay, if you guys haven't been as innovative, here's a challenge that I've got for you. Tell us about it.
So the idea is same thing is you have to learn by doing it and by doing it over time. I think they say it takes 4 weeks to kick some new habits. So I wanted to, and what it forces you, so there's 5 parts. The first part is just you. So I suggest you do new activities, new things, change your habits, and then reflect, observe what happened, and then reflect. And then the second week is you and somebody else. So when you start creating new things with somebody else, what happened in the challenge, and have that same discussion with a partner. It could be a work partner, it can be a personal partner, depending on community. And then the third week is about doing this within a kind of a broader element. So it's a team. If you have a team, it can be a work team or some other team. And same thing, make some change and then discuss what happened and, learn from it. And then the fourth week is maybe doing it in a broader level, whatever you broader level, bring it to a community, think about a project that will impact the world or, the world around you, necessarily the whole world. And then the fifth week is actually, let's put it together. Let's take a challenge from, this is, I think, my challenge, and move it through the 4 steps through using the tools and see what happened and see that what I'm hope to get from this is actually sometimes we say, we don't have time for a process. We don't have time to go through the steps. And it shows you that it doesn't take that long. You can do this in an hour or 2, but you can actually, by having a process that is systematic and clear, it can really help move things along actually much faster than you think.
Well, one of the things that's speeding things up in our world, which last year, if we'd done this interview, wouldn't have been available, which is AI.
Yeah.
And I don't think people get tired of talking about it. What they do is they're like, I'm just exploring how good this can be by going to ChatGPT and putting in really good prompts. With the rise of AI, how do you see its role in kind of evolving the context of innovation and creativity, and what are the potential benefits? One is, I think, speed, but the other one is, what are some of the challenges? And obviously, it's going to be an aid for all of us. It's here to stay. It isn't going anywhere. And I think from an innovation standpoint with a team, it can be just so mind-boggling good.
For now, I still think it's a tool. It's changing. So I don't quote me in 2 years because I have no idea what's happening with AGI and all of that. But I think it's great for coming up with more options, whether it's different, trying to understand your problem, going different angles at the problem, getting even some research for you, getting some thought around it, getting more ideas because it can generate 100 ideas in a second. So I think to generate options or create prototype, create visuals for you, create slogan, create something, and look at different ways to, implement what you have. Where I'm still suspending judgment for this is really the decision-making. I think decision-making is still, so the converging part, when you kind of have a bunch of problems or a bunch of ideas, which one do you pick? I think at this stage, the last decision-making should be human. And that might change at some point. But for now, I think we know more is with all our experience and wisdom that can be on an LLM that's been using the internet for so long as a nourishment. But it will change as companies have also their own program where they start feeding their own knowledge. So that will get them more refined into those. So that is going to evolve. So I think it's a mixed. I have a friend and colleague who talk about the concept of sandwich. Start with the human, have the AI in the middle, and then end with the human. And I really like that concept. I think that's still the concept for now. As I say, things are changing so fast.
Well, look, there has to be somebody to write the prompt. Then the computer has to give you the ideas back, and then the humans have to process what the computer gave back. So the sandwich is really a really wonderful way to look at it. And I would say that it's true. What it's doing is it's taking some of the mind-boggling, crazy stuff, and it's allowing us to get to a much more vast place than we could in our own human brains to come up with ideas from around the, let's just say, universe. And that's the good part, is we are getting fed ideas and concepts from places we in our universe might be smaller. Let's put it that way. We have a pretty small universe, but the universe of the AI is vast. It's large, and we can draw from that to see if there's something we could use. Now, in measuring the success of an innovation project, we talked about if it was a failure, how the culture treats it, and how the organization works with people. But how should organizations measure success for innovation efforts? And are there specific metrics or indicators that you would recommend? Because, look, if you go out on a project and it didn't work and the company spent $300,000-$400,000 on it, and it was like, whoa, wait, I don't want to look at that as, oh, we failed. I want to look at it as we found one more way not to do something, right? And I think that's, and I think people that have been successes in business, the Steve Jobs of the world, the Bill Gates of the world, they've always had failures, but learned from the failures and turned it into success. So the question is how would you want to measure that and talk with our audience about that?
So I think there's a couple of things. That's why I really believe in the prototyping and early prototyping, which is really
prototyping.
And get it to learn as a learning experience, not an evaluation experience necessarily. And the more you do it up front, when it doesn't cost you so much time and money, the better you might be later. And so it's an early investment in I don't call it failing. It's an opportunity to learn. I think what's important is for a company and each organization different have very clear criteria on when they what is success is going to look like for them, and be clear up front. So there is not like the team's on a certain path and then a year later the management say, well, you didn't reach that goal, but we didn't know that was a goal for the project. I think what's important is and I'm lost my train of thoughts. So
That's okay.
and so
We're talking about what metrics you would want to measure for it.
yeah. So some of it is time. What can we do? Feasibility and return on investment. So what are we expecting? When? Like, we want a project that's going to be, are we looking for $1 million project or are we looking for a $10 million project? Are we looking for something that we can do in 6 months or something we can do in 3 years? Are we looking at different level of feasibility? Like, we want to do projects that within the way that we do business, or we're willing to do business differently or work with other organizations that can help, because this is not our core business. So I think those are really important to be clear and defined, because they will help us also make those decisions. So if we're looking at a $10 million success for a certain company, that means certain level of risk. And if it's 100 million projects, that might be a different level of risk, but you might risk more, but you get a bigger return on investment. Or if we need something in 6 months, probably is not going to be that innovative, because in 6 months we can only do so much, but we want something new there because we need the next generation of whatever we're doing, or the market's moving, and unless we have a new product in 6 months, we'll be left behind. So being clear on what it is for your organization and define what your success is. And that also will help you make decision along the line when you're like, well, we have those two ideas. Which one do we pick? Well, let's go back to what we were looking for this project.
Yeah, and I would concur with you that it is kind of an iterative process, right? I would think a company, and I'm not inside of Apple, but if you look at every time they iterate a new iPhone or a new iPad or a new computer or a new device with a new chip, this has been probably going on prior to the launch of the product. Who knows? It could be years. It could be a year. It could be a year and a half. It could be 2 years. But I don't have a privy as to how long it takes them to innovate, but they're always iterating because they're always coming up with something newer, faster, sleeker, better, propose better. And that is the world that we live in, and that's what sustains their current stakeholders' value, right? As unfortunate or as fortunate as it is kind of the world that we live in, replace something old and get something new, right? So anything that you would say about, just the length of time people have to innovate something?
Well, it really depends on your business model, and there's different level of innovation. To practice a phone, there is a phone that is just one generation up and you don't see the big difference. And then there is certainly a whole different, a step change that might happen. When they start integrating AI that they're only going to do in their new model, that's probably a step change versus, the 12 versus the 13 versus the 14. So it is all that. Or when they come up with actually, not that it was successful, but, those new goggles and things like that.
That one was a big step change, you say. Yeah.
So
the same thing with the new iPad, even though we're speaking about Apple folks, but the reality is this would be any company that's evolving or coming up with a product. Even service-based, cloud-based companies where they change their software, go through a long period of time before that launches or that they launch that. Now, looking ahead into the future of innovation, what do you see as the future trends in innovation, and how can organizations kind of prepare to stay ahead in this ever-changing landscape? Because the landscape of not just innovation, but the landscape of business in general continues to move very fast, and I think it's something that's worth you addressing from your perspective.
I think, the best is to be open and flexible because change is happening so fast. So we used to do like the 5-year plan and the 10-year plan, and they might be great. It's good to have, but we just have to know that the 5-year plan is going to change in 6 months because everything is changing. So being flexible, being willing to change, which some organization is harder than others. Have teams that are willing to, understand that in the world that's changing all the time, they need to also be able to do that. And that might mean more failure. That might mean more new projects. I think having a portfolio of innovation concept is also important. So we have the small innovation that we need, and then we have the bigger one that we also need to have in the pipeline. And then obviously see what's happening with AI, because it's going to be keep changing the way we do business. Whether you have a product that has AI in it, for the end users, or just built AI in your system. And so this is going to be, and I think a lot of companies are starting to really know that they need to keep up and try to see what's happening. But it also sometimes you don't want to overinvest as things are changing so fast. So it's definitely for everybody. It's flexibility, curiosity, asking questions, be willing to change plan as things change so fast.
Well, your book, Fire Up, and I want to say to my listening audience, Fire Up Innovation, Sparking and Sustaining Innovation Teams, is a great place for people to go and a great resource. And as she said, if you go to Fire Up Innovations, you can download these pages and work with them and scribble on them and do whatever if you don't want to scribble up into the book itself. I'd encourage you all to go to fireupinnovation.com to reach out to Helene and Cahen and actually speak with her, leave her a note. She has speaking engagements. You can talk with her about that as well. Thank you for listening to this podcast on Inside Personal Growth. We appreciate your support. And for more information about new podcasts, please go to InsidePersonalGrowth.com or any of your favorite channels to listen to our podcast. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.